Hi, and welcome to the second video for Chapter 13. In this video, we're going to look at the archiving and unarchiving method of doing persistent storage, which sort of builds on the plist archiving and unarchiving, or rather plist storage we did in the first video. And the way it builds on it is that we're going to create a way for any class which conforms to or implements the methods of a couple of protocols called NS-coding and NS-copying. And they're sort of what they say. An NS-coding object can encode itself, and an NS-copying object can copy itself to create an object of type NS mutable data, which is just sort of a raw sequence of bytes. But it has the property that it can go into a plist. We didn't use it last time, but it can go into a plist. So we can, if we can get things into that NS mutable data type, we can just use the write and read methods we used and create them, save them as a plist with that one node. So most of the classes that are built into the foundation class and the UI kit already conform to these protocols, NS-coding and NS-copying. That is, they have methods that you can call to archive them to an NS-mutable data object and then write that. So you can make your own objects archivable by adding methods to the class that allow it to conform to the NS-coding and NS-copying classes. So what we're going to do is redo our application from the first video, that is the storing the 4 lines application. We're going to create a custom class for storing the contents of those 4 lines. And it's no big deal. It's just an array of 4 strings that we need to store. That's our whole model for this app. But we'll, in addition to just storing that single property, the array of 4 strings, we'll add the appropriate methods to make it implement NS-coding and NS-copying. And then we can use those methods in our application will resign active to save the method, to save the data, and in viewDidLoad to load the data. So let's get started with that. Well, let's close this, or we'll just open a new, or we'll open a copy of that project. I've made a copy of it. It's exactly the same as what we were doing before. Oops, I think something wrong open. So let me reopen that better. We're going to open an existing project called Persistence Archiving. Lord. I think I opened every single thing I could as a project, so now I'm trying to close Xcode. And hopefully that worked. Let's try that again. You can probably hear my fans in the background of the videos. It attempts to kill all that. Right, so this is the right thing. It has the old name, but it's a different copy of it. So what we're going to do would be let's close down. We've got too much stuff open here. I just want the main view controller at first. And actually, I'm going to create a new file for our custom class. And so this is a Swift file. We're just going to put in a Swift class in it. And we'll call it 4 lines. In the interest of time, let's grab the code from the book project, and I'll talk about it. Okay, so we're calling the class 4lines. We have to implement class NSObject or some descendant. Everything can implement NSObject. Any class can subclass NSObject. Maybe we want to create, if we have something that's some existing class that subclasses NSObject, we could use that instead. But we've got to use some class in that subclasses NSObject. Then we're going to subclass NSCoding and NSCopying. And those again are the codes, the protocols, the abstract classes, if you like, that give us our functions for coding, or archiving and unarchiving the data in this class, the data in an object of this class, so that we can store it as an NS mutable data object in a single node plist. So here's our data, which is just an array, an optional array of strings. And we've got to have it, it has to have a key. We'll see how this key gets used later on. Well, actually, we'll see it in just about 5 lines. But we're going to have that string associated with encoding an object of this type. You can encode more than one object into an archive, but they have to have unique keys. We have the required initializer because this is an Objective-C class. I'm sorry, because it's a Swift class. And then we have the required functions. There's an init function that returns an optional, that returns nothing, but this optional mark has to be here anyway. And then because it takes as an argument the thing it encodes it into. And then we're going to have a function copy that returns a copy of the object. And let's go through each of those in a little bit of detail. So the parameter of init is something called an NSCoder. And we're going to, and you have to pass that in. You just have to allocate it. The we're going to set set up how that works with the code of this method. So we specify that lines, the variable here, is going to equal what you get when you apply the decoder that you're passed, calling the method decode object with the key given above, and we're saying we're going to decode it as an array of strings, which we know how, because those are all in the foundation class, we know how to decode that. The encode function will call the function encode with the return variable and the key, and so that's how that'll give us our encoding. And then copy, we don't worry about this zone variable. Essentially, it's always going to be nil. Just creates a copy of our 4lines object. So we allocate a new 4lines object if and then we handle some conditional stuff with this. If let lines to copy equal lines, we can allocate a new array of strings, copy the stuff into it, and make that the lines attribute of new lines. So new lines being an instance of this 4lines class, we have this method here, and then we can return that object with its new copy installed there. So that's our class with the protocols implemented. Let's go now to change what we need to change in the view controller. Excuse me. We can leave a bunch of stuff alone, like we can leave this function to look up. Excuse me. We can leave the function to look up the URL alone. And we can leave up the function that creates the line fields from the user interface alone. We can leave this application to where we have to make changes are the decoding code here. So we get the URL the same way. We let the see if the file exists in the documents directory the same way. And we do the encoding the same way. What we're going to do differently is the way we handle what happens after we've created that line fields array. Actually, we're going to I'm going to comment out this line here, which is where we used the NSArray initializer to read the plist directly. And instead, we're going to let our object data equal, just ignore these errors that are coming up at the moment. And actually, in terms of doing things fast and not making mistakes, I'm going to copy it and explain it. So I'm going to create what's called an unarchiver. Let me get my parentheses right. And that line I deleted, I should have undeleted. I should not have deleted. So I'll leave that. We're going to read the file in a different way. Let's go up and actually, we can comment out not just that much, but we can comment out more of this. That's the thing I want to comment out. I'm actually going to leave this in. Okay. I think we're kind of where we need to be now. take it back. We need that line commented in. We're going to read the URL. We're going to read it as data, though, if the file exists. And then we'll allow an unarchiver to process that, which it is able to do. The way this works is because the class data is, we can create an unarchiver based on being able to unarchive data, and then we can call the decode object method there because we've implemented NSCoding in the forLines class. So that's what, it's these methods that make this work. And this is the thing that actually does the unarchiving. Then we have to specify that we're finished with it, and then we copy the stuff into the URL, into the user interface. So find the URL. If it exists, then we'll get the contents of the file as data. We'll create an unarchiver for that data. We'll unarchive based on the fact that a forLines object implements NScopying, or NSCoding and NScopying, and then we'll close the decoding. Then we'll copy that stuff into the user interface. And we'll register, just as we did before, we'll register the listener or observer for the application will resign active method. And that's where the encoding goes on. So to encode our stuff, we need a forLines object. So we'll comment that in and initialize it. And I've got some stuff I have to put in here. forLines self-line as NSF. I want to change this to be an array of strings. And we're not just going to write the array now. We're going to do the reverse of what we did above. So we'll create a data object. Create an archiver. We'll pass that data to the archiver. We'll encode with the archiver using our forLines object for the key that we coded above. We'll finish encoding. And we'll write the data object, which we can do because it's one of the methods that can go directly into a plist. That's it. Oh, I left out the parentheses to initialize that object. And just failed to capitalize K. for some reason it looks like our outlets are not connected, which they should be. I'm going to go into the user interface and look at line fields is connected to the view controller. I think all that's right. I don't know why that arrow is not working, but we'll go ahead and test this. And oh, I know why we crashed, because we already have a file with that name, which is encoded differently. So let's go and change, let's give a different name to our file here, just so the simulator will be happy. Go to the view controller. Let's call this data archive 3. I think I already used 2, but that should be that new name should allow us to get around that problem. Yeah, so, okay, so it read the file is blank, and we'll just put some data in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, and Shift H to halt, and restart it. Stop that and restart. And there's our data. So we're clearly saving and restoring. And if you were to go into with the File Explorer, might as well just do it just to verify that it's there. We're going to go to the library for the simulator. And we're already, let's see, where's, I want to find the application for the simulator that we're using, the application we're using today. Somehow in another simulator. Let me close this up completely. And no, everything else is older. This has got to be the right simulator. Oh, I think it's because the app was created actually yesterday that we're having this issue. That should be the only app. Is there another application created yesterday? No, this is program 3B. This is the solution to your homework. I am in the wrong app. And I'm trying to find, this app has to be in here. We're running it. This is the 8 Plus. This is the only one. What I had aimed to do here was to show you that the data.archive3 folder existed, and I'm not succeeding at that because somehow I'm finding the wrong global ID for an app in the simulator directory. Is it possible I'm in the wrong simulator, but all these seem to go back? It's got to be this simulator. It's got to be this data. It's got to be this application. Somehow, I mean, this is where it's got to be, and I'm not sure why it's not here. But I'm not going to take your time up with it, but obviously the app is working here, and I'll follow that up in the next video.